Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Dave Mack is a Scottish born Australian living in Japan who discovered the power of a carnivore diet in 2022. Ever since this discovery, Dave has been a tireless advocate of the carnivore way of eating. He believes the best way to spread the carnivore message is through showing the incredible results that others have achieved from eating this way as well. Each week, Dave hosts an insane 10 to 20 carnivores on his YouTube channel to share their stories of desperation to transformation. His channel, named the No Carb Life, has over 70,000 subscribers and gives his audience everything they need to get educated on everything to do with weight loss and overall health, including the basics of a ketogenic diet, simply and effectively advancing to a carnivore diet, and incorporating intermittent fasting into a healthy lifestyle without hunger or lack of energy. His channel has featured many of our former and future guests, including my awesome friend Adrian Gledhill, Dr. Tony Hampton, and Professor Bart Kay, among others. Dave can be found on his YouTube channel, which is, again, my No Carb Life. Dave Mack, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on, Casey. Really appreciate it.
I mentioned a few of the people that you've hosted on your show. I really enjoyed those interviews. Those were not my favorite interviews that you've done. My favorite video that you've done is called Dave Mack is a Lying Idiot.
Right.
I love that one.
Yeah, I couldn't make that for a long time. So just some background on that. A vegan named Vegan Gains had made a reaction video about me very shortly after my channel kind of blew up. And he was basically criticizing everything I said, like it was down to the point where it was like I was breathing wrong. And I couldn't watch. One of my subscribers told me about it when it came out, and I couldn't watch it at first because I thought if I watch this and he says something bad about me, I'm just gonna give up and I'm not gonna be doing YouTube anymore, right? And so it took about 8 months for me to get the courage to watch the video. And after watching it, I kind of felt like, what was I worried about? Because he he was, I mean, he was harsh to me, but he was harsh in a way that made no sense at all. And so I made a reaction to his reaction. And that's Dave Mack is a lying idiot.
Dave Mack is a lying idiot. That's the funny thing, though. Like, anytime I've tried to engage somebody from the other side, which ironically, all the vegans, doing these reaction videos and commenting, that only promotes us anyway. So the more the merrier. Like, that's great. But the only feedback I ever get when I try to engage somebody that says it's stupid, this is false information, like I'll say, okay, fine. Like, what do you want to talk about? Like, how can we discuss this? What don't you like about this? And it always ends in like a similar way. Like, you're an idiot, you're stupid, this is dumb. And it's like, well, you didn't really say anything that I didn't already know anyway. And you don't bring anything to the table. It's so hard to have productive discussions with people that we disagree about when it reverts to just like a senseless attack, like a 4 year old. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, the kind of arguments that degenerate just to name calling or you're stupid or you're this or you're that, it's really frustrating. I mean, I saw that the other day in a debate between Michael Greger, who's a vegan, and Ivor Cummins, who's keto or carnivore. And like Ivor Cummins handled it really well because when Michael Greger had no arguments and just started shouting and screaming at him, Ivor just sat there quietly and calmly and just kind of nodded his head. And it was like, I wish I could do that because I think I'd end up being caught up in it if if that the shoe was on the other foot. But yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Michael Greger. I watching some of his content. He really doesn't look like he's fully there. He looks really, really scattered. And he's the author of the book How Not to Age. If you think about that, that's like the perfect title of the book. And he's not to talk too much smack about Michael Greger, but he's definitely showing the world how not to age. Not very gracefully, I would say. You,
Hmm.
on the other hand, you look great. And you're in Japan. How did you make it to Japan?
So I traveled a lot through when I was younger because I was lucky enough to get a job where they were sending me overseas. And when I eventually settled back in Australia, I was excited to be back living in Australia. But after a very short amount of time, life got very boring. And, traveling to work an hour each way and, living in the suburbs and whatever. And, the highlight of the week is going to the local shopping mall and all that kind of thing. It kind of got a bit boring. And so I was like, okay, I want to travel again. And where can I go that's going to be different and exciting? And there's nowhere more different than Japan. And initially it was only 2 or 3 years, and it's been 18 now. And yeah, I don't have any desire to go back.
That's amazing. I just had a client that took a trip there. She said the people are incredible. It's like the most friendly people she's ever encountered. She said the food is amazing, obviously. And then she also said it's not only that you can't find garbage anywhere, it's you almost can't even find garbage receptacles. Like magically, it's almost like there's no place to even put like you never see anything related to garbage there. And she was like marveling at that.
That was one of the most frustrating things when I arrived here first for a holiday. And it was like, where can I throw my rubbish away? I can't throw my. And it's basically Japan has this cultural thing, like when you have rubbish, you take it home with you.
Ah.
Yeah.
Wow. You see all those wonderful videos from like the World Cup where they go to a stadium and all of the Japanese fans afterward just clean the entire stadium.
Right.
It's absolutely wonderful. Yeah, what a cool culture. I definitely don't blame you for being there. And we are here to talk about your health journey. So you
Mm.
mentioned traveling around and work. We mentioned in the introduction you found carnivore, but it wasn't that long ago. Tell us about your personal health history and journey, which started at a quite young age for you.
Yeah. So, you know, the, I've been pretty much unhealthy all my life. And that's just because I've been eating junk food all my life. I'm a sugar addict. I'm an anything addict. If I can try something, I'll get addicted to it. Um, and that's one thing. And I was always kind of unhappy with my weight and have I was never massively overweight, but always unhappy. And when another kind of separate thing, but as I was younger, when I was 17, I had a stroke, and that wasn't related to diet or anything like that. That's related to an aneurysm bursting in my head. And so the hemorrhagic stroke happened when I was 17, and as a result, um, I had some lingering effects from that, like weakened right side, and kind of limp when I'm walking, things like that. And that contributed a bit to depression. And that depression contributed a lot to seeking out ways to feel better, like drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, eating until there was nothing left to eat, and then finding more to eat, that kind of thing. And again, I never got massively overweight, but I was unhappy with my weight. So that's kind of how things started. But that just continued on through most of my life. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask how the stroke impacted your like professional life. Obviously, that's affecting your movement, but it did it have any lasting effect on your professional life, your career?
Not really. No. I was very fortunate that it's going to sound a bit weird, but I was very fortunate that I had the stroke when I did. When I was 17, like recovery was very fast. Um, the issue I had was just externally really, like the with the gait and stuff like that. But yeah, um recovery happened really quick. If it happened in my 40s or 50s or something like that, it would have been pretty bad, I think.
I
But
see.
yeah.
I see. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you that. Sorry, I cut you off. Can you
Yeah,
keep going
no
as that
no
story?
worries. Yeah, so I continued on like as a I got to the point where I was an alcoholic, and I found out in 2022 that I was pre-diabetic, and also that, of course, I knew I had to give up the alcohol at some point. But hearing the doctor tell me I needed to give up the alcohol was kind of the kick in the pants I needed. And the only the only thing I knew how to do was that get would give me self-control to perhaps get rid of the alcohol and the sugar was go low carb. Because I'd done low carb on and off over the previous 22 years, and I knew in myself that that gave me self-control. I knew that just that there was this feeling kind of comes over you, like you suddenly rise above all your addictions. You suddenly rise above a lot of things that you would normally be really, I don't know, intense about. And so I the doctor wanted to put me on some drugs, and I was like, no, 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 hang on, let me try and sort this out for the first couple of weeks, you know. And so he agreed, and I gave low carb a try again, and that coupled with the fact that I changed my routines around a lot so that I wasn't triggered by the same things. So I wasn't walking past the bar, I wasn't walking past the convenience store where I could buy alcohol or ice cream or whatever. I was able to get off the alcohol, get off the sugar, get off the processed foods. Um, the issue came up when I started having quite severe gastrointestinal problems straight after I'd eaten. And I was like beside myself. I was thinking, okay, I've got off the alcohol, I've got off the sugar, I've got off all this bad stuff. And now I'm in the bathroom all the time straight after I've eaten. So what's wrong? So I started looking around and I found videos by Ken Berry and other people and talking about how vegetables may not be the best thing to eat. And Ken Berry in a video particularly singled out some of the vegetables I was eating as, vegetables that would cause gastric distress and other issues. And I'd been eating them because I thought, oh, well, I need to get my vitamin C. And I gave up those vegetables straight away. I was just like, okay, well, I'll try it without it. So I just went on to eating, bacon and eggs and meat, and steak and stuff like that. And the problems disappeared. And I've been carnivore ever since, and that's been over 2 years now.
That's amazing. Do you recall as you go back in your journey and you said you've done versions of low carb for over 20 years. Do you recall some of the influences that got you there? Because I would say outside of maybe like the Atkins diet, maybe that second kind of iteration of Atkins diet when like seems around that time, like 2000, 2002, that like everybody knew about Atkins again, but they were already eating such low fat that people were eating super high protein and were losing weight, but were very grumpy at the time. Like, do you remember what some of the influences were that even, you know, told you about low carb?
Mm. So Atkins was my influence. So
Okay.
I tried everything to lose weight, eating only certain types of food, only eating vegetables, and I was never really a vegetarian or anything like that, but I'd go through periods where I'd have a week or something just eating carrot soup or whatever. And nothing worked. And so I bought Atkins' New Diet Revolution in 2000, and I read through that, and it was like everything was turned on its head. It was like everything he's saying is the exact opposite of everything I've tried, but everything I've tried hasn't worked. So I'm going to give this a go. So I was really excited. Um, and Atkins has a number of phases. Like the first one is induction, and actually, induction is probably ketovore kind of
Right.
thing because it's basically eat some lettuce and then everything else is bacon and eggs and whatever. And so I pretty much stayed on induction the whole time. And I was on it for months and I felt better than ever. And I thought, okay, I finally found the thing. I finally found the thing that works. But I allowed myself to get talked out of it. Despite my body saying, yes, this is it, you've found it, keep doing this. the media was going crazy in Australia about Atkins at that time. Like they were just getting they were getting people watching, because it was so controversial, right? So every night there was a story on the current affairs show that was on TV about how, more and more people are doing it, but more and more people are going to kill themselves. And they had all these experts on talking about, oh yeah, it's a heart attack waiting to happen. And I'm a programmer. But my manager at the time, at the bank that I was working at, used to be a dietitian. And he was all over me about it as well and telling me how I was going to kill myself and I needed to eat carbs and I needed the fruits and veggies and bread and all this kind of thing. And there was just so much pressure. I gave up.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? I think it would be weird if you would have continued on with all the media and all the experts and all that stuff. Of course,
Mm.
you might feel okay now, and yeah, you lost weight because you cut your calories. Maybe that's the reason why, but now you're going to get a heart attack at some point. And it's so interesting too. Now we have so many people that have been carnivore for so long, and it's like, where are the bodies? Like we know a lot of these people have high cholesterol. We should be like building up bodies of carnivores who are keeling over. And I just think to myself, like the first day that a carnivore gets a heart attack, it will be mainstream news on every platform for months. It feels like, you know what I mean? And it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, like I've heard particular cardiologists that are quite vocal on Twitter and places like that and YouTube that are anti-keto, anti-carnivore that'll come out and say, "Oh, we found this guy who'd been on keto for 2 weeks and he had a heart attack." And it's like, no, heart attacks don't work that way. You're a cardiologist. You should know that, like it's years of buildup.
So ridiculous. Okay, heading back to more recently in your story, when you found out from Dr. Berry that vegetables might be causing a little bit of distress, how, first of all, what were the vegetables that he identified that you said you were consuming a lot of? And what kind of volume are we talking about as far as vegetables? Were you consuming primarily vegetables? Did you think you had a lot of them? Or was it actually quite few vegetables you were getting?
So the vegetables were, and actually these are probably classed as fruits because they've got seeds in them, but basically red peppers and yellow peppers. And what I was doing was I was like making up this kind of fry pan full of bacon and eggs or eggs and ground beef and just frying up 8 or 10 eggs, scrambling them up and then putting, say, bacon on top of them. And then on the side, I was having these kind of fried up red peppers and yellow peppers and a little bit of bok choy or spinach as well. And yeah, I think the red peppers, yellow peppers were because they're nightshades, they were the ones that were causing the distress. So he talked
So,
about
go ahead.
tomatoes and the peppers, yeah.
So, okay, so you just can't eat that many red peppers and yellow peppers, right? The volume of vegetable matter you must have had, like you said, as a side dish. If you're already eating 8 eggs, I know what it's like to eat 8 eggs, and it's quite satiating with bacon. It's also very satiating. The space that the peppers would have taken would have been so small. I'm saying this to drive home the point that like people don't understand how harmful even small amounts of vegetables can be. Like people can,
Mm.
maybe come around on fruit because it's got lots of sugar. Maybe people can agree about seed oils and, grains are more refined and sugar is probably not great, but it's this sacred cow of like, well, I'm only having just a little bit of vegetables. Those little bit of vegetables might be enough to cause needless suffering.
Yeah. And I've never been a fan of vegetables. For me, it was always like I've been told this is where the vitamin C comes from. You need vitamin C. And at that stage, I knew nothing about how we don't need as much vitamin C if we're not consuming carbohydrate and that kind of thing. I was just like, I need it. So that's what I've been told. And it's just, this is 40 odd years of having been messaged that these food groups are important, it's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so interesting that even that small volume was still causing gut issues for you. You eliminated that. You said you fixed, the gut issues. What other things improved in the way that was like a whole nother world from where you were already in the low carbohydrate space?
So I noticed I didn't straight away, I my sleep improved. And I knew that was going to happen because I'd been on and off low carb for 20, 22 years. So I knew my sleep was going to get better. My energy and those kind of things got much better. But it wasn't until maybe 3 months in that I really noticed a lot happening. And the things that changed were just amazing. Like I had arthritis in my left knee that just disappeared. And I noticed that kind of by accident. So I was gonna cross the road one day and the light's kind of changing, it's flashing like, okay, stop walking now. And I was like, okay, well, I've got to run before this car turning around starts beeping at me. So I started running. And normally what would happen because of the arthritis, I'd get this as soon as I start to run, I get this kind of signal in my head that's like, don't do this, it's gonna hurt. And so I started running and I got that message. And then I realized, yeah, but it's not hurting. And I just continued running. And it was like, oh, this actually feels kind of good. And so that was that kind of weird way of finding that the arthritis wasn't there anymore. But then, so you keep wanting to test it, you keep like running a little bit and it's like, oh, this is awesome. It's great. So that disappeared. But on top of that, I started to see improvements in my right side that, it's been more than 30 years now since I had the stroke. So I was never expecting. And they were just like I was getting a little bit stronger on my right side. And the gait wasn't as pronounced. The limp wasn't as bad as it had been. And when I was navigating stairs, I wasn't holding onto the handrail anymore. And I was running downstairs and, it was just amazing. So you can imagine before I had arthritis in my left knee and I had like this weird gait because of the weakness on my right side. And so I'm walking down the street looking like, a monkey almost, the way I was walking. Like it was so pronounced and so like energy sapping. It was awful, and in those days I had to walk 15 minutes every day from the train station to get to work. And that was the worst 15 minutes of my day every single day.
These are just things that you're not supposed to be able to improve. I remember hearing, and you mentioned something earlier, like having the stroke when you did was actually very fortunate because you probably had extra time and more plasticity in the brain. But like I've heard that after you have a stroke, you basically have a year to do any kind of improvement. And once you hit about a year, you don't really get much more improvement out of that. Is
Mm.
something I've heard. Or arthritis. Everybody knows you can't reverse arthritis once you have it. You can maybe manage things or hope that it doesn't get any worse, but you can't make these things better. Yet I know that you and I have heard this story told countless times. It's incredible.
Right. Yeah. It's we're just told there's so many things we can't fix. Like, oh, you're just getting old. That's, the wheels fall off once you get over 40 or over 30, whatever it is. The wheels start falling off and it's just downhill from there. And you can just hope for the best until you get to the point where you can't move anymore. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be that way.
That's right. Yeah,
Mm.
that's right. Yeah, I turned 40 this year and I would not go back to the way I felt when I was 30. I feel way better now being on carnivore.
Mm.
It's so much better. Some of the improvements you were noticing, was it that you were noticing them, or also like your family members noticing what you were doing as well? I'm sure they didn't exactly jump right in to doing carnivore with you, did they?
No, no, no. They still think I'm crazy.
Okay.
So they didn't notice those changes. What my wife noticed was the oral health improvements that I had. So I had gum disease, and that meant bleeding gums, really sensitive to cold, um, and like just a mess and really, really bad breath, to the point that when I would be talking to my wife and we were like a short distance from each other, she would kind of recoil as I started talking because it was just like this, you know, I don't know, smell of death would
Yeah.
hit her in the face. And that just all went away.
Wow.
And so of course she noticed that because she's no longer doing that whenever I'm talking, you know. But yeah,
Yeah, that's so interesting. You mentioned something earlier how you noticed it by accident, and I often find people in this world is very similar to that. Like, oh yeah, like why did I not get athlete's foot? I always have athlete's foot, and now I don't. And why haven't I injured my shoulder in 5 years? Like
right.
twice a year, I used to. Why did that just slip away? Like how come I've not had a cold or been any kind of sick, like with more than a sniffle in like 5 years since I've done carnivore? It seems like a lot of people, the changes, they just kind of slip away. You don't hardly notice until you think back, like, oh wow, I feel really happy that I don't have anxiety anymore. Like this is great.
Yeah, well that's kind of the way it went for me, you know, like I had Um, no, a lot of people that start carnivore these days, they'll kind of start a YouTube channel at the same time to keep a record of what they're doing and keep themselves motivated and that kind of thing. And I didn't have any of that. I just kind of thought I need to, the plan was get off alcohol, get off sugar. And so I went 3 or 4 months before I ever thought about having a YouTube channel because I was just doing it for those couple of reasons. And I didn't think about anything to keep me motivated outside of getting off the alcohol, right? And it was 4 months later when I realized so much had improved and so much had changed. And I thought, I've got to start talking about this more because people need to know this. You know, I kind of was getting angry and feeling like we've been lied to so much about these things. And I just need to get the word out there. But I thought, you know, I might influence one person and 10 people in total might see my videos or whatever. But I just thought I've got to say something about this because it's just, we've been brainwashed.
We really have. I love it when people get angry when their reaction when they first hear about this stuff. They start trying this. Everything feels better. They start getting pissed off as they learn about the dietary guidelines and Dr. Ansel Keys and the involvement of the Seventh Day Adventist Church and all this stuff. Like I like it when people are a little upset because they should be. Like people die over this all the time and suffer
Mm.
needlessly. I love your passion for sharing, especially on your YouTube channel. Tell us about what that was like to get started. Did you feel like you had any bit of, I guess, like imposter syndrome, or did you think that there were maybe like too many voices already out there? What else could you contribute? Like, what was it like to get that started?
Well, when I got started, I didn't really know there was much of a community out there. You know, at that stage, I just watched maybe, I hadn't even found Dr. Chafee at that point. I'd found Ken Berry, Sean Baker, and Joey Schwartz.
Yeah,
Um, so I'd found these three guys, and like Joey Schwartz was great because it was interviews all the time with different people, you know. Um, and so I'd only found these three guys. So I didn't know there was much of a community. And so for me, it was just got to get the word out there. And after I started the channel, then I started to like, I think as because I was talking about this and it was related to the same part of my YouTube account where I'm watching videos, that's when I started to see more recommendations for other stuff. And I started to see the recommendations for Bart Kay and I started to see the recommendations for Anthony Chafee and everyone else. And Then I realized it's a big community, and I thought, oh, this is cool. But I thought, okay, well, I didn't need to start my channel because there's so many people out here talking about it already. And then I just happened to make one video that blew up, and I was like, oh, okay, so there's people are interested in this still. So yeah, I just kept going.
Yeah, there sure are. We mentioned the number of subscribers you have, and like to go through any of those episodes and see the comments and see that you're always commenting back. I absolutely love, and there was definitely a need for you in the space for sure. Joey Schwartz, you mentioned Joey Schwartz. Do you know what happened to him? We interviewed him like 2 years ago, and I don't either hear anything from him or he took some weird turn. Like, do you know like whatever happened to him?
So I don't know where he is in the world. Like he looked like he was bouncing from country to country, but basically
Okay,
he deleted all his videos. All those interviews are gone. And then there are some new interviews, but he seems to be on a more of a carbohydrate-based diet and saying things like he was wrong and that kind of thing.
got it.
So
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, no worries. I remember seeing a debate that he did with Bart Kay, and I was like, why are you guys debating? I thought you were on the same team. But he had some, yeah, Joey had some strange ideas. But anyway, that's fine. We'll leave that. As you were putting out content, from what I can see, it looked like when you started, it was more just sharing your own experiences and trying to teach people. When did it start to become more of like an interview style? I know you do both, but you do a lot of interviews.
Yeah, so it started as interviews when I realized that people share, well, when I had the thought that the best way to get people to try carnivore is to show them what results other people are getting. Because, in a personal one-on-one interaction, let's say you were eating a regular kind of standard diet, and I came up to you and said, "Hey, you shouldn't be eating that. You should stop eating the sugar and stop eating these things. You'll feel much more healthy like me and that kind of thing." And you're just gonna be looking at me like, "Who do you think you are?" I'm not listening to you, and I'm more likely to push you further away than bring you in. But if I'm sitting there with three of my friends and we're all eating the same way and we all look really good and feel really good and we're all laughing and enjoying life and whatever, you're going to be much more influenced just by observing us than you are by me lecturing to you. And so I just thought, okay, well, it's probably a good way to go.
Yeah,
And yeah.
I really like it. You're a great interviewer. I thought this was really interesting. I wanted to, in the introduction, put in some of the people that you and I have shared, some of the guests that we've both been able to host.
Mhm.
I was stunned how far I actually had to scroll past so many people that I have never heard of before I could find three people that we both shared. It was so fascinating, and I love when I uncover that like I've got all of your content to go through now, and I'm going to learn so many other stories and learn about so many other people. You find a lot of people out there.
Yeah. So I started off kind of interviewing people that maybe I'd seen on other channels, or reaching out to people like Dr. Anthony Chafee and saying, "Hey, can I interview you?" or whatever. What I've found is if I interviewed a doctor, then I might get 3,000 views on a video and people going, "Oh yeah, this doctor's great. I really like that doctor," that kind of thing in the comments. But if I interviewed someone who no one knew about, like was just like me, just like a regular person, you know, um, I would get so many more views, and the comments were always like, "Oh, thank you for sharing your story. This is amazing. This is really motivating for me," that kind of thing. And so I realized that it was as if people wanted to see just that regular person. They knew what the doctors were going to say. They were either going to be anti-carnivore or pro-carnivore. The you know, but hearing someone's real story was what people wanted. And so I just kind of started putting the call out on my website, if you want to share your story, sorry, on my channel, if you want to share your story, come on and share your story. And yeah, I think people are so excited about it, they want to talk about it. So yeah, it's reasonably easy to get people to come on and talk.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's
Mm.
amazing. That tells you everything you need to know. Like you would assume that these people that have not been on very many podcasts, of any, at least talking about this, you would assume that they would be very shy, or they wouldn't want to reach out, or they would have some imposter syndrome themselves and think that they don't have anything unique to share. Yet the diet is lighting them up so much. They're so enthusiastic to be featured and hosted for the first time. And so, yeah, you would think people would be more nervous than they actually are. That says a lot about the diet.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It's like even the people that are kind of nervous, once they start talking about it, it's just like it just comes out.
Yeah, that's so fun. Doing these interviews is one of my absolute favorite things. Recently, I was talking to Kerry Mann. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's making a documentary called Healing Humanity, and
Yeah.
we kind of talked about that same thing. Like and he does it on his show, and I do it on mine too. We're going to talk to the doctors for sure, and then we're going to get expert
Mm.
opinion and researchers and try to validate this scientifically. And it is very, very nice to see somebody with the credentials, a doctor, a medical
Mm.
doctor,
Mm.
say, I've looked into this, I do it this way. It provides that kind of safety net that you probably wish
Right.
you had, back in the early 2000s when people were telling you were going to die. But it's the stories. It's like you see Carrie Mann travel to Alaska to interview the carnivore there who's 700 pounds. And it's like it's hard not to start bawling when you watch these things. And that's where the power is. We flew to Canada to hang out with Maggie, who's 83 years old now and has been a carnivore for 65 years and is super fit. And you're right, those stories are so super powerful.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm kind of addicted to this at the moment. So it's great. And I never thought I would be in a position like this where every day I could talk to three or four people from all different parts of the world and just have such interesting conversations and like immediately have such a strong bond with people because we've got the way we eat in common.
Ah, that's amazing. This is such an unfair question to ask you, but do you have some favorites that are really like standing out to you? I know if you asked me the same thing, I'd be so mad. Like, come on, they're all my favorites, like my kids or something.
Yeah, I mean they every story is unique in ways, and every story has a really awesome part about it. But ones that stand out in my mind are people that get their vision back and people that have reversed MS
Mm.
or at least reverse the MS symptoms. Like that, I before I got into this community, I didn't realize exactly what MS was. I just thought MS was this big kind of boogeyman of a thing that once you got it, that was it. You were, you were stuck with it for your whole life, and it was just one of those things. And to hear so many people be able to just start leading a normal life after they start doing carnivore, it's just amazing.
Mm, yeah, I love that. I've seen that with my own two eyes. I've got a client that I train once a week that was diagnosed with MS, and she found a carnivore diet, and she takes no medication. She operates completely functionally with no. She used to have to walk with a cane. She doesn't anymore. It's quite interesting to be able to see that. As you're doing these interviews, you're collecting these stories, and you're learning the whole time. One of the funnest parts for me is
Mm.
not only conducting the interview, but I make sure that I listen to all of them as they come out. And I even then remember stuff that we had talked about that I'd forgotten about. And so it's been fun to learn different ways of doing things. So have you had people on that have shifted your thinking or shifted the way you personally approach your own carnivore diet?
Um, that's a good question. I'm not, I think I want to say yes, it has. I can't think of particular examples, but I mean, the the fact that I knew nothing about any of this stuff before I got started, before I started talking to people. And, I didn't know what an A1C was. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. And I just relied on a doctor to tell me, oh, you've got this, or this is your problem, or whatever. Um, I've done so much learning, and I think I probably have modified stuff based on what other people have said. I mean, I think what people have said is what got me off coffee.
Mm, okay.
Um, because I've spoken to enough people that said they did much better after they gave up coffee. And from there, me realizing that it was affecting my sleep so much that, yeah, giving it away was a good option for me. And it was
Okay.
hard, but yeah, that's probably something I modified.
Okay, interesting. I've yet to take that jump. I feel like it's kind of a neutral thing for me, so I still include it in, but yeah, I don't miss it sometimes on the days that I don't have it, but I should go further into that jump. Um, and yeah, like I wonder about things like, do you choose grass-fed, grass-finished beef or not? Organ meats, do you include organ meats or not? Like things like that. Have you also shifted your thinking on, or pretty much kind of stayed the more conventional route?
So yeah, I've pretty much stuck to what I'm just the conventional way, just buying supermarket beef, which is grain fed. But that's because it's very difficult in Japan to get grass-fed beef. Um, because culturally, grass-fed doesn't really work here because it doesn't look as appealing, right? And in Japan, it's all about the appearance, like think about the fruits here. They get the big fruits and they wrap them all up and they've got the bow on the top and all that kind of thing. So it's the same with any kind of food here. And so yeah, it's not a big thing. So I'm just at the moment I'm just doing grain fed
Okay, gotcha.
and
Yeah, I do.
no organs.
Yeah, I do the
Occasionally
same.
I'll go liver. Sorry to interrupt. Occasionally I'll have a bit of liver at a barbecue restaurant, but that's maybe once a year.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, can you take us through a normal day of eating?
Mm.
Another thing I really like about this way of eating is after it seems like people really love a lot of variety in the beginning, but over time that tends to just kind of fall away, and it's like yeah, I'm eating eggs, I'm eating burger patties, I'm just eating like two or three things, and it becomes so much easier. How is your eating adapted, and what's like a typical day for you now?
Yeah. So the variety thing's never been an issue for me because I'm the kind of person that's all or nothing. And that also it means that I'm kind of habitual in things that I do. So if I eat the same thing all the time, then it doesn't really matter. So that for me, that was never an issue. But I, since the beginning, I've pretty much been OMAD. And that kind of just happened one day. I ate my breakfast later in the day and then realized I wasn't hungry in the evening. And then so I've been OMAD ever since. And so eating for me is breakfast, and it's 8 to 10 eggs, and they're scrambled, and then I'll just put about a pound of ground beef on top of that. Use a lot of salt, and that's my meal for the day.
I've heard that food is expensive in Japan, but what is the total cost of all of that in one day for food?
So that would be um, how much? We're probably talking about 10 to $15 US.
10 to 15 bucks, one time a day, a few minutes to scramble up some eggs, eat, you're kind of done. It's so convenient and inexpensive to eat this way. It's fantastic.
Mm, yeah, it's great, and you know, it's so nice just to have energy that's like this all day. Just no dips and spikes, and it's just constant energy all day.
Yeah, totally steady. I love that as well. And it's just not. you don't need to worry about food. You don't need to have snacks or anything like that. Just eat your meal, eat until you're really full, and yeah, it just kind of really settles out. So obviously, talking to a lot of people, you've gathered lots of really good practical tips and tricks for somebody interested in this. How do you help people get started on a carnivore diet?
I would say it depends on your personality, right? So for someone like me who's kind of all or nothing, if you've been an addict in any way in your life, whether it's with sugar or tobacco or something like that, I would say probably you're of the personality that's most like that's going to do better jumping straight into it. Just rip the band-aid off, go cold turkey. If you're someone who can moderate, like, um, you mentioned before, if you don't have coffee in one day, if you're that kind of person that can have a coffee one day and then not go for 2 days without a coffee or something, you're probably in a better position where you can slowly move into it. And in that case, you're not going to suffer as badly from things like keto flu and stuff. Once you are at the point where you're doing just carnivore, meat, eggs, salt, water. Um, that's when you need to, when you get to that point, to make sure you stick to it, you need to just take one day at a time. And kind of like I think I've heard from people this is similar to AA, kind of like not thinking long term, not thinking, how am I going to do this diet for a year? This is going to be impossible. How am I going to do this diet even for the next 3 weeks? This is just not possible. Like my friends are going to take me out for dinner or whatever. Or I'm going to see, commercials on TV for pizza, whatever it is. Just think about one day and getting to bed on day one without cheating. And then what's going to happen is when you wake up on day two, you're going to feel so much better about yourself. Firstly, because you slept better, because you didn't have carbohydrates the day before. Secondly, because you're going to realize, I did it. I got through day one without cheating. And then, so that builds your resolve that little bit more, right? And then it's a little bit easier to get through day two. But at this point, just focus on day two, get through that, get to bed without cheating. And then again, when you wake up on day three, your resolve is going to be that little bit stronger because you realize I did it again. I feel much better. And just keep doing that and focus it a day at a time until you're not thinking about it anymore.
It's fantastic advice. I absolutely love that. And do you notice the same pattern with people gravitating towards ground beef, beef in particular, and eggs as well? As like the staple, kind of like the main foundation.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like the most common thing I notice is that people really go off chicken. Yeah, which I've never been a fan of chicken, so but I guess it's because of the fat content.
Yeah,
And so red meat just suits.
yeah, I agree. Do you add any fat to anything, or do you just mostly keep it to the eggs and the ground beef?
I put a bit of butter on stuff, but I've got to be really careful because there's a balance, between not enough fat and too much. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wondered if you pay attention to kind of like the ratios, or you get different kinds of ground beef with different fat contents, or do you just keep it mostly consistent?
Yeah, in Japan there's ground beef or there's not ground beef. There's
Got
no
it.
there's no yeah. Like in Australia we have, the higher fat content ground beef. That's the stuff that doesn't sell out because everyone's worried about getting the lean meat, right? So that's like paradise for me. But yeah, in Japan it's just one type.
Yeah,
And
got
I'm
it.
not I'm not sure what the content is.
Got it. Okay, that's totally fair. I think those are really good practical tips for somebody. And again, I love your work and how you're putting this message out there. You're also focusing primarily on YouTube. I really like to listen to podcasts. It's a little bit more convenient for me when I'm out and about and walking around than YouTube is. But one thing that I absolutely love about YouTube is the interactions. You get to talk to people. I don't get to
Mm.
do that on podcasts. as much as I can on YouTube. And so I really try to encourage people like, hey, if you want to like shoot a message or tell me what you think about something, like go to the YouTube channel where you can leave comments. Obviously, you've gotten some comments that are not too supportive of what you're doing from vegans who have a difference of opinion of you. But by and large, I notice that most of your comments are incredibly kind and very supportive. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, and I think the thing that spurred me to continue with the interviews was the comments, because it's just like the comments are so supportive, but also like, yeah, that happened to me too. Yeah, I could never have believed it myself until it happened, this kind of stuff. It's been really, it's quite inspirational.
Inspiring and validating in a way.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. So we come across a lot of people who are experiencing these benefits. They are very fired up. They want to share. They want to be a guest on your show. They want to talk about it. But maybe they're not quite ready to take that next step to be, a quote unquote like content creator, somebody that starts a channel and puts this out. Again, there's a lot of people out there. There's tons of different channels and podcasts out there. And we have this thought of like, what could I possibly do or say that would differentiate myself from everything out there? What would you want to say to somebody who has a message that they want to share, but they're feeling a little bit of trepidation about starting any kind of like social media platform or something on YouTube to share their message?
I would say, well, first of all, come on my channel and talk to me. But I would say, like, just remember that sharing the message, it doesn't have to be through YouTube. You could get on Twitter, you could get on Facebook, and you don't have to be preachy about it. You just have to say, hey, these are the results I got. Look at this before and after picture. And if you're on Facebook, you're gonna have all your friends being like, "Oh, what happened? What happened to you? What were you doing?" And when you tell them, they might be a little bit, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. What about heart attacks? What about this? What about that?" And you can respond to them and try and explain that the reason you don't need vitamin C, or the reason you don't need fiber, or whatever or the reason you don't need as much vitamin C, or the reason you don't need fiber is because of this. Or you just link them to someone's videos, link them to Bart Kay, link them to Anthony Chafee, and just say, here's the answer here. And then they could doubt your results, or they could doubt what you're doing, but they'd be less likely to doubt a doctor, as we talked about before. But just start that way, and then if you start to feel more comfortable, then you can maybe put a YouTube channel together, anything. Yeah.
Well, again, that's great advice. Dave Mack, this has been such a fun conversation. I don't think you're lying, and I also don't think you're an idiot. So that's the good news. I don't think you're a lying idiot. I think you are an awesome person who is so passionate about something that really changed your own personal life. And I love just seeing that kind of unattached action, not attached to the outcome or followers or monetization necessarily, or trying to find tons of sponsors. It's just, this is all about getting out a message to help people. It's very, very genuine. And I would just send anybody over to your YouTube channel and just know that they would find amazing content and a really wonderful host who's gone through his own suffering and got out of it on the other end, just so lit up to share the message. So I think it's absolutely wonderful. I've really enjoyed our time together. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
So they can go to YouTube and just search for No Carb Life, or they can also search for at Zero Carb, and I'll come up with either of those.
Okay, really easy. We will tag that in the notes. Dave Mack, the not lying idiot. I really, really appreciate this conversation. Again, I really love your content. Everything that you do is really, really good. Even that video was done very kindly and respectively. You didn't just go and trash a bunch of vegans. You just responded to a few things in a way that was really genuine and kind. And so I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule to appear on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me on, Casey. Really appreciate your time.
Of course, I appreciate yours as well. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.